Thank you all for being here and first thing in the morning. I've always been the early bird kind of writer, which is actually something I'm a little bit embarrassed about. The romance of the night owl writer is very alluring to me. So it feels apt to be at an event called Wakeup with like-minded, similarly wired readers and writers. My name is Claire Sisanovich. I am a senior editor at the Yale Review, which is the country's oldest literary quarterly, housed right here on campus, just a couple of blocks that way. For over 2 centuries, the Review has been publishing some of the greatest thinkers and writers, from Thomas Mann to Virginia Woolf, Adrienne Rich, and John Ashbery. And to our great delight, in recent years, that slate has included winners of the Windham Campbell Prize. This fall marks our 6th collaborative issue with Windham Campbell, and in it you will find work by the most recent prize winners as well as work by recent previous recipients. So copies of the magazine are available at the table in the back. Please do swing by and grab one, and use this as an occasion to subscribe to the Review. You'll find information on how to do so, as well as a special discount on the bookmark that's in the copy. And I think that all of our writers here today are also teachers. So I will just take a moment to note that the Yale Review, in addition to being a home for writers, is a home for students. We work with undergrads and grad students who are interested in writing, editing, publishing, learning the ropes. We have programming throughout the year for them, and if that's something you're curious to learn more about, you can check out our website. You can come talk to our staff, including me. So do check out the Review. But today, our event in the tent, which is a great phrase, really rolls off the tongue. I'm lucky to be joined by 4 of our writers, Anne Enright, Rana Dasgupta, Tongo Eisen-Martin, and Sigrid Nunez. We are really just here to chat, so we will learn about their writing, their lives, how the 2 of those things fit together. This will be really informal, casual questions, and all of them, they don't know this yet actually, will have the chance to participate in the classic Yale Review game, favorites, lasts, firsts, and nevers. It's an easy game, don't worry, and it'll be fun. So without further ado, our first writer will be Anne Enright. Anne, come on up. Anne Enright needs no introduction, but she's the author of many novels, a professor of fiction at the University College Dublin, and a selection of her essays, Attention, is coming out next year, so keep an eye out for that. So Anne, you wear many hats as a writer. I'm an avid reader of your criticism in the London Review of Books, your fiction in the New Yorker, and actually what you wrote for the Yale Review we could even call travel writing. So I'm curious, do you think of these pursuits as a continuous project? Do you enjoy them precisely because they feel really different? How does it work for you?
Yeah, no, for me, writing nonfiction, especially for an American editorship, you know, which is very interested in precision and accuracy. But yeah, I mean, it's a particular style. I mean, it's like learning a language for me in some ways, about how the paragraphs are constructed and where they go and how it ties up and all the rest of it. But those are inquiries, and they're quite forensic inquiries. I get kind of a bit super focused on my subject, and I really sift through it. So the direction, the momentum is inwards, towards something.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm writing fiction, I'm adrift. And so it's all expansion. And there are moments of that kind of, that lovely little zing of accuracy you get in writing nonfiction as well. But it is a completely different enterprise. And it's the one I love to do. I mean...
Although adrift, it sounds...
Well, I don't know if adrift is but you're in the zone.
You're wandering. Yeah.
Well, you're in the zone, but it is also expansion because you're making it up. It doesn't pre-exist. You're not taking it apart. You're adding, you're constructing, you're finding the next thing, or it's finding you. So maybe it's more passive. It's certainly less it's not detective work.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I know that actually in maybe a different life, you were a TV producer. Is that a whole different thing?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a child. I was a child TV producer.
And does that have any bearing on your creative, a prodigy, we might say?
Yeah, no, early and often. Yeah.
Does it have any bearing on do you ever think, oh, the lessons of TV are coming to bear?
So at the time, I write in the moment. I mean, I think that the artists should leave themselves open to the moment, however that might be described. I don't write about the past. I'm not interested in the kind of nostalgia that a lot of Irish fiction sort of mellows a lot of Irish fiction, or is somehow contained in Irish English. Some kind of melancholy is an easy enough reach about the past and nostalgia. So I would have been thought of myself as a contemporary or modern or even modernist writer, in part after I left TV, where everything was 3.5 minutes. It was that long ago, okay? That now everything is 40 seconds.
Yes.
But it was 3.5 minutes, and my mind could do 3.5 minutes. I could count it out. I would direct it up in the live TV in the box, I'd be doing the cameras and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, it made me interested in the fragment and reinforced an interest in, or a certainty actually, that there was a lot of stuff that was a bit hectic and available and very much now, and Ireland wasn't the old thing. It wasn't the old country. I'm sorry to tell you here in America. It isn't the old country. It is very, it's a modern space.
It's new, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, TikTok is always waiting for you. If you
Yeah. Well, no. No.
Well, I'm a big believer in demystifying the writing process, which I think, as we all know, involves hard work, boring work sometimes. And I was very struck in your Yale Review essay you write about being on vacation and thinking to yourself, I should be at home writing, which is a familiar feeling for me. And I wonder if you could talk a little about how guilt and anxiety, what role do they play in writing?
I don't feel guilt, and
No,
I'm not a very
good.
anxious person, really, all that much. What I was saying in the Yale Review is I should be at home writing. It would be brilliant to be at home writing.
Because it would be fun.
Well, because I hadn't really been writing, but I was cycling, and it was something about the rhythm of the cycling and the way that the world was presenting, the pace of observation. It became quite incantatory or something, and I could feel the writing muscle or the writing spring being released. And
Because of the rhythm, almost.
Yeah, because words, loads of great words. Lots of things to see.
Yes.
And something about attention. So I felt that newness that precedes sitting down at the desk, a sense of newness. I mean, I used to write all the time. I wrote every day for 30 years, and then I kind of stopped. So all of that is interesting. I mean, there were decades where I would only describe myself as a creature that writes.
Not a writer.
Well, everything went,
Yeah.
everything went into it. And I wrote every day. I had small children and no money, and, you need a lot of focus.
So would you always write at home? I mean, as part of traveling, would it?
I used to, when I wrote all the time,
Yeah.
I would write in airports just to show off. Especially if you're traveling with fellow writers.
Would you write in a notebook?
Say, excuse me. Hang on. I just catch that. You wouldn't quite, but you might. But sometimes I'd be so into it that something has to be done. Mostly what I do is I'm fixing I'm fixing it, and then I get some more to fix,
Oh, fixing things you've already written, going back.
Yeah, so it's mostly, I feel that I'm editing, but and I kind of fool myself into writing new material. I see the next turn,
Yeah, that's a good trick.
Yeah, it's called work. Yeah.
So this essay that I've now invoked a few times, and everyone should go read it. It's back there in the magazine. It's about a lot of things, but it is about aging, which is something that you have written very movingly about in a lot of other work as well. And I wonder what draws you to it, and if I
don't
can
know why I'm writing about aging, Claire.
Well, we are all here.
How is your work on youth proceeding?
Well, to
Aging.
write about aging is to write about time, right? Which
Time.
everyone is writing about.
Okay, time is important.
Yeah.
What did I say about aging? Oh, that everything hurts.
Well, and that your,
mean,
your
I could-
relationship to encountering this piece is all about Venice and going back to a place you've been before.
So
Which
yeah,
is
it's kind of
is
the
a crazy-
flash forward, flashback of that Venice invites. Really, if you think of films like Don't Look Now, whatever, it's very it is, it layers itself. It's already.
Yes.
So I kind of see the ghost of my 19-year-old self walking around Venice in a state of amaze, as I am then, of whatever age, a certain age. Now I'm a certain age. And I was there with my husband when I was 36, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of wonderful. You do wonder, will I be back?
Well, this actually leads me very directly to my next question.
But a lot of my work is about memory.
Yes.
I'm really trying to get away from that.
Because you just said a few minutes ago, no nostalgia.
I
But
know,
that's different.
but I'm always peeling it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, okay. So I work here at Yale, but I also went to Yale, and it's very. I'm flooded with memories all the time, and this encounter of the
Yeah.
past self. And this is a little bit self-centered because it's what I'm thinking about at Yale. But I wanted to ask all of you, because here we are on a college campus. Was that moment in time formative for you? College age. What floods back the most?
So I've lived in Dublin a little reluctantly most of my life.
Yeah.
So my map of the city is a map of personal encounters, as well as, I suppose, increasingly, because one is obliged to write about it, the literary map of Dublin, which is always available. So you can walk past, Oscar Wilde's father was an eye surgeon, and he had a conservatory built on the side of his house, so he could have lots of light to see the patient's eyes.
Yeah.
So I could pick any spot and say, yes, but that also happened, something else happened there. It was at the back of Trinity where I went.
Yeah.
And also I've had this astonishing continuity in that I met my husband at Trinity when I went to Trinity. So a lot of those spaces are shared spaces. It's really I feel very contained and interested by geographically and the time. Those two planes really work very nicely for me.
And you want to write about it. I guess you write about everything.
About. I don't know if I write about when I'm writing fiction.
Interesting.
So you might use it, or you might use this, in the Proustian way, you might use the sensation.
Yes. Right, because memory is so sensory.
Sensory and uncanny sometimes, and and speaks a lot about how consciousness is a shifting entity. I was nearly going to have a large opinion there about consciousness, but I stopped myself just in time.
Save it.
I wouldn't. Sorry.
Someone else will pick up the thread. Okay, our last question. This is the game part.
Oh, God.
It's very easy. You just pick a category, and it will be one more question. Favorites?
Kiss, kill, marry.
It's similar. Favorites, firsts, lasts, nevers.
Well, favorites are for 9-year-olds. I just want to tell everyone that.
Youth. That has to do with youth.
As someone who's been asked what's their favorite writer, more times than they can count.
Crossing that one off.
What's your favorite color? All of them. Okay, firsts.
Firsts. Who was the first reader of your work who encouraged you in a way that felt truly meaningful?
My mother.
All right.
Yeah, just an essay I wrote, and she about my, and I read it out to her. It was a kind of satire about my class getting washed up on a desert island, and it was funny as well. But she was doing all her stuff, and she had very focused praise for her children, but it was fulsome. So it was. She said it was amazing. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, you're free.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And next up, Rana Dasgupta. Rana is a novelist and an essayist. His next book, After Nations, The History and Future of the Nation State, will be published in March, which is really kind of right around the corner. Am I right?
You are right.
Right, March. Okay, good.
Yes.
So I'll start actually with a similar question that I asked Anne. So hopefully you were paying close attention.
I
You
was.
write in multiple modes. You're both an accomplished novelist. You're also an accoladed nonfiction author. As a reader, I would say there's a thematic through line. You know, you're interested in globalization, say, in both modes. But I'm curious if it feels that way to you as a writer. Is this the continuous project? And if so, how do you decide when you're writing in one mode versus another?
Yeah, I think for readers, it's the idea that fiction belongs in one camp and nonfiction in another camp is very clear. I think for me, I always looked for the mode in which I can tell the story I want to tell. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm a storyteller before I'm a fiction writer or a nonfiction writer. And sometimes a story needs to be told, for me, it needs to be told straight, as it were, as an argument or as a set of observations. And sometimes I want to, filter it through, dramatize it in characters or whatever. But having just spent 7 years writing the book that you just mentioned and drained myself completely with trying to make arguments and find evidence, the next project I'm going to do, which is my novel, seems like a massive feast to me, where I can do what Anne was describing and sort of be lost in a thing that has no end, no direction, and where I think, the sensuality of language is everything. But I think I've also moved around a lot in my life, and sometimes, I think especially when I wrote my last book, my third book, I felt it was time to actually, after 2 novels, to take stock and write down some of the extraordinary things I felt I was experiencing in a city that was not my own, the capital of India, New Delhi, which at that time was going through this extraordinary change. And that was when I felt this cannot be a novel, partly because many of the characters that I sort of observed there were so strange and exaggerated that it would seem very trite to make them up. They were already fully made up, and I wanted to tell the reader this actually exists.
Yes, the
this
stranger
is actually
than
in
fiction
your world, yeah.
phenomenon. So, okay, you describe anticipating the feast, the fun.
Right.
Once you get there, do you think you'll feel the opposite of, I've got to get back to nonfiction?
There's an efficiency to nonfiction. You know when you've finished. You're making an argument, and you've assembled all your evidence. And in that sense, it's a cleaner kind of project. I think fiction can be endless. A novel is never finished, it's never perfect, it could always... But I think that the feast is also about the sort of relationship you have with yourself when you're writing fiction. I know that my dream life, for instance, is a big part of writing fiction, and that I'm with myself in a much deeper way writing fiction than writing nonfiction. My characters announce themselves, they enter my dreams, and they tell me what is going to happen to them or what should happen to them. And
I really envy this type of writer. My characters are never coming to me in my dreams.
Well, I think my novel Solo was a very mystical experience for me, and it was very beautiful. I had this sort of visual image of trying to sort of part this curtain, on the other side of which was this character who he would come to my dreams and I would wake up in the morning with chapters sort of worked out and things like that, which is not how nonfiction works. It's just much harder work, but more obvious kind of work too.
Interesting. So your novels, I think we could call them political, social novels. Were there, but feel free to disagree with that classification, were there sort of exemplars of the form that inspired you early on or continue to inspire you?
Well, I think, again, my inspirations are both nonfiction and fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certainly people like Kafka, who are enormously, who I read obsessively earlier on in my writing career, and who was a massive sort of fiction influence. But there were also people who kind of gave me a grand conception of the world, everyone from Marx to Freud. I read a lot of theory while I was writing. I didn't like to read fiction while I was writing fiction. I liked to read philosophy and theory and things like that.
Why didn't you like to read fiction?
When I opened novels, I got drawn into other people's worlds, and I either felt that they were very bad, and I was wasting my time, or that they were so much better than what I could produce that either way, it was sort of defeating. Whereas when you read, and I think, I don't know if you must have heard Kwame Dawes' beautiful lecture last night. I mean, I related a lot to his stories about art and music, that I find it much easier to engage with art when I'm writing. Other people's words can be very obstructive sometimes.
Yes, and this somehow relates to the dreams. I don't quite know how. Maybe dreams, of course, transpire in language, but they're sort of nonverbal as well.
Yeah. I'll let you have that.
Thank you. So your piece in the fall issue, I talked a bit about Anne's, and yours is a nonfiction essay about, in which you identify the true crisis of the Trump era. And we're going to switch gears a little bit, sorry to invoke his name, but one of the challenges of this moment is there's so many crises, and I'm wondering how you choose what to pay attention to. This feels like sort of the challenge for us all on a daily, almost hourly level, but especially a challenge for a writer. So take this question however you want, but what to focus on, what to care about? How do you narrow down?
Well, I think that is a key question for all of us right now. And I'm going to talk later today, probably in this precise spot, about my book, so I won't do so now. But I think just to explain the impulse behind it. As I say, I think of myself as a storyteller. And so what are the stories we tell, let's say, about Trump or about the moment we're living in? Are they the right stories? Are they true stories? Are they useful stories? Or can we do better stories? And I think this book, After Nations, out of which all those reflections come, started with the feeling that I was living between the US and the UK and India just after Trump was elected for the first time, just after Brexit had happened in the UK, and 2 years into Prime Minister Modi's election in India. And all of these three countries were sort of looking deeply into their own national souls. What is going on? What is the problem with our culture, our history, our institutions? Why did we end up in this place? But as I was moving between these countries, I felt that these conversations were uncannily similar, and that maybe this wasn't a national question at all. Maybe there were systemic issues in the nation-state system that explained some of these things that in all those three countries could not have been predicted 10 years before. And so out of that, I feel that in terms of storytelling, we can, and maybe this is the way that our media works, the way our minds work, we can fixate on individuals and think that the whole of reality is coming out of one man's mind or consciousness, when that is not really a very plausible account of reality. We would never sort of explain, feudalism as sort of one guy's kind of...
Yeah.
And so the piece in the Yale Review is an attempt to see, what are the wider, deeper purposes that Trump is serving. And again, I'll speak more about this later, but I mean, I was listening again to an amazing conversation that Steve Bannon gave, where he talks about kind of almost looking for a Trump figure to fulfill a particular political agenda, realizing that the Republican Party had hit a dead end. It needed populism, and Trump just came along. And Bannon describes him. He says, this guy, he was our guy. He says, he was a hammer, he was a guy's guy. And to me, the hammer part is the interesting part. That before Trump was elected, before he was even doing any of what he's doing, other people were thinking, okay, he can wreck things. This is the man that is going to have the personality capable of breaking things apart and creating the space into which other things can flow. And to some extent, I wrote this piece in the Yale Review because I think while all our attention is on Trump, we're missing some of the other dynamics, which might be dynamics of Silicon Valley, which might be dynamics of Wall Street. A lot of the dynamics that are whose sense of what is the crisis in America is very different from maybe our sense, and who are finding a very, very useful entree right now in the sort of Trump era.
And that your job as the storyteller is to zoom out in some ways from that single tool, the single hammer.
Well, I partly yes, because I think that the press, especially in this country, I mean, this is a country of sort of extremely expert and experienced political commentators who know every single personality and can link all the sort of micro, forces in this. But I think what does get lost in that sometimes is that history is long, processes are long, and America is not a unit standing alone in the world. It's part of a system, and China is also part of that system. And in order for America to sort of retain its place in the global system, maybe things need to be taken away from the American people in order for America to be a more sort of robust, competitive unit. I mean, China is an authoritarian state. And I don't think we can name what this battle is or where it ends up, because there's lots of conflict and competition. But I think just looking at what Trump says or what so-and-so thinks, or looking at the last 3 months or whatever, I don't think we can understand this. And I think, just to take up something you just said, I mean, I think a big part of my work, or a big question I have in my work is, how old are we? When did we start to exist? How far back in history do we need to go to explain you or to explain me? And I tend to think that that's quite a long way. Usually we narrate our history through maybe our parents or our grandparents, but I feel that you and I and the other people in this room, we took many, many centuries to produce, and that, again, nothing that's happening now can be narrated only through what has happened in the last few months, or, as is the American way, to start in 1945, as if, or everything started in 1945. America didn't start in 1945, and so some of the processes that are going on right now certainly started before 1945.
Yes, right, and the culture of instantaneity does not encourage us to think with this long view in mind. All right, well, come hear more about this book and read more in the Yale Review. I feel obliged to end on a slightly happier note, or more hopeful note. I find a lot of hope in being surrounded by students. I know you've been a teacher. I'm curious, many of us who make a living in part by standing in front of a classroom, we're supposed to be imparting knowledge, but we know it often flows the other way. What have you learned from your students?
I've learned, I should say my daughter is sitting there. She's 18.
Yeah.
She's about to be a student.
Okay, students and daughters.
And so students and daughters. I taught at Brown for several years. I learned a massive amount from my students, because they just know a lot of stuff that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I would create these courses which were sort of fields of inquiry, and they would teach me as much as I taught them. But I think it's also, the general intergenerational conflict is always so nourishing for both generations or all generations. I mean, there's a way in which all of us, when we're 16, 18, 20, whatever, we're looking for those figures who have an extra generation or 2 generations of experience who can guide us and teach us. And I think it's very moving to see how kids continue to seek that out and always want to plug into other generations' experience. But as you get to a certain age, especially in a moment when things are moving so fast, you also realize that you have ceased to be in touch with a lot of the kind of real pulse of things, and that you are also in need of that. And of course, children, your own children teach you a lot of that, but students, because of the formality of the scenario, they're there just to supply. And I think one of the things that I found fascinating about, there were I could talk for hours about my students at Brown, but one thing that I found very fascinating was that students who were at the end of their student careers found that they had a generational difference, even from the students who were just beginning
yes,
their
the
student
micro-generation.
careers, that if you had grown up with Wikipedia or Facebook or whatever, what was the core sort of information system, you felt a great difference with the people who were part of the next big technology. And they thought differently. They looked down. These were Wikipedia people. They looked down on Facebook people and of course, since then, this is a while ago, obviously. So I think all of us are more and more in need of people of different ages to sort of inform us about what is their experience of politics, the world, technology, love, sex. I mean, all these things were sort of very much in flux to my students.
All right, your turn for the game.
I hate this kind of thing.
Favorite, first, last, never.
Last.
Last. When was the last time you felt truly stuck in your writing, and what did you do?
Actually, I'm stuck in nearly everything except writing.
Ah.
Like Anne, I'm in that 30-year period. I get up every morning at 5 or 6 in the morning, and I write for many hours. And it is, if a day happens where I cannot do that, I'm miserable and I'm just depressed, and I feel like I've not lived. And only when I've done that can I move on to enjoying other things. So actually, this is the most fluent part of me. I'm stuck in everything else, but not that.
Well, we'll try not to hold that against you, those of us who are stuck writing. Thank you, Rana.
Thank you.
And now Tongo Eisen-Martin will come on up to join me. Tongo is the author of 3 collections of poetry, including Heaven is All Goodbyes, so do check them out. And you're here from Detroit, is that right?
Originally from San Francisco.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I want to ask you a little bit about San Francisco, actually. So I read earlier this week, and you can tell me if this is apocryphal, that your first encounter with poetry was in elementary school, performing a rap for Jesse Jackson in his 1988 presidential campaign. True?
No.
No? Totally made up?
Yeah, that was made up, man. Did I make that up?
You might have made it up.
Come
He's
from?
a fiction writer as well. This is a podcast.
Really? On a podcast?
All right, we'll skip it. This was excellent. This was teeing me up to ask you about the political and the poetic, and how
I got you.
and the evolution between them. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about that, how far it goes back, how when those started to become intertwined for you.
Well, I mean, I think as, I don't know, as both evidenced by real-time experience and any little study of, political economics, the baseline, the baseline of a society is, or especially this society is a monopoly of violence, and so kind of minding that dance. There really is no other orientation. I mean, there's no non-political act.
Yeah.
Everything is either the practice of liberation or the practice of hegemony, And so if along the way I pick up a pen, it's gonna obey that principal contradiction, you know what I mean? So it's not, all that to say, it's not really a choice. Or and the kind of the good and the bad news is that you are a political creature one way or the other, and you are benefiting a side one way or the other, regardless of how slow your immediate environment may feel, or even how static it might feel. You're in the middle of a very, very kinetic contradiction.
Kinetic contradiction, yeah. Are there particular poets whose, political work or political writing especially inspired you early on?
Well, now back to the hip hop. I think I was raised on the basic food groups. The Last Poets, Gil Scott-Heron, Audre Lorde, June Jordan. One of my favorite poets is Roque Dalton. He was, I think, what was it, El Salvador, but a brilliant poet and revolutionary who actually was killed in the midst of a struggle. But what's the operative phrase? The actionable intel. Actionable intel. I think that really trying to pull from all disciplines of art, or at least what I can kind of intuit their different strategies to be. So I've probably got more from trying to figure out what makes John Coltrane tick than insert an author. And I almost out there, maybe one kind of journey of writing is just the never-ending search for strategies. But yeah,
Strategies for
getting from one line to the next.
Yeah. Is that the one line to the next, or is it just sitting down in front of the page, period? What's the hard part?
I think the hardest part is just kind of short-circuiting your self-absorption, which is not really like it. We are all heroically self-absorbed. It makes complete sense. You know what I mean?
Can't help it.
But there is your enemy right there, and so really all of the all of the kind of the aspects of your psyche that might feel like a hindrance can be put to work, can be made to cooperate. And I think, a kind of, I guess my baseline journeys is just learning how to make, or just learning how to cooperate with all of my internal weather patterns.
Yeah, the internal weather. Very good phrase. Okay, so you mentioned San Francisco earlier.
I'm sorry, I'm so stuck on Jesse Jackson, bro.
We're going to get to the bottom of it. Don't worry about it.
I never met the man.
So you were the poet laureate of San Francisco.
Yes, I was.
Amazing distinction. And it made me curious learning that about the relationship between poetry and place in your work. And you have you write about specific places, but also, I'm curious about the U.S. in general. In your poem in the Yale Review, you have a great line about how the U.S. doesn't actually exist. So can you talk a little bit about place?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a path of least resistance type of pursuer of language, I guess. So whatever is immediately in front of me is what I tend to digest. I don't try to, I don't swing for the fences that often as far as trying to project myself into distant landscapes. But I mean, I guess I can't say enough. Or let me direct everybody's attention to Gerald Horne's The Counter-Revolution of 1776, which is a pretty thorough proof that the United States itself is really just the creation of whiteness, or the creation of a whiteness that is, the kind of like almost the byproduct that becomes foundation of a need to save slavery in the Western Hemisphere. And as, the Caribbean became less and less tenable, like literally, at some point, South Carolina, half of the population of South Carolina was a move from Barbados. And so solving the kind of the powder keg realities of trying to hold these, plantations in the Caribbean, they solved it with kind of space and the importation of white people to make up a good buffer class for what is actually like a permanent enemy in Africans and a permanent enemy of indigenous people, or like what did what's the Benjamin Franklin? We're an intestinal enemy. Benjamin Franklin said every slave can be considered an intestinal enemy of the United States. So this thing really being a kind of just a national identity built from permanent repression. This actually, like, the way that like the actual topography, or the way that topography is manipulated, all is conducive to repression. And so I guess I'm just taking my surveys.
And does poetry, how does poetry help resist the repression?
Well, poetry, okay. Again, it's like a lot of our communication is really shorthand, and necessarily so, because we just don't have time to get into all of the molecules of our psyches when we meet. We have to accomplish things, especially in capitalist society that does not value human life. So it's like, let's get these conversations over with. Let's get this work over with as quickly as possible, so we can keep, outrunning our annihilation. But I'm sorry. but wait, what was the question? Sorry.
Well, like, what's poetry up to in the midst of all this repression?
Right.
Resist efficiency.
Got you. So poetry, and not even, nothing is really heroic or unheroic. Just simply having the time, or time not being a factor, in your power to dialogue. Now you can move outside of these constraints. And so therein lies this great liberatory potential. I think we're not as sensitive as we should be to the way that hegemony really mangles your mind. And also to kind of plagiarize Audre Lorde and Sister Outsider, she said something like, if I were to say, okay, you're free now, go forth, right? You really would not know what to do, because our psyches have so conformed to a ridiculous system of absolute power, various genocides, and all this type of thing. But herein enters the poem as kind of a shape for your consciousness to trace.
Yeah.
And also, now, this is going to be a weird, to pull in, what was it, The Shining?
Oh, I would never watch
you,
The
you
Shining.
know you can't watch The Shining?
No.
So there's like I watched this documentary. I was stuck somewhere. And there's this documentary on The Shining in which all these people had all these theories about this movie. Like down to like within the movie is what's his name, Kubrick? Is the director's attempt to tell us that he actually was part of the faking of the moon landing, and you know what I mean? Like there's all these theories. But then there was this really groovy take where someone said, no, The Shining is about colonialism, settler colonialism in the United States. And the twist is that, if I were to present you with all of the pictures of mass murder, you would not be able to handle it. But by giving you this little piece of art, your mind can engage the realities of, of a world gone wild for centuries now.
So the poem can be that
the poem
unit.
can be
Yeah.
like it's a way for you to engage the truth of the matter.
All right. Okay, you ready for the game? Favorite, first, last, never.
Never.
What is one thing you tell your students to never do in reading or writing?
Man, I don't think I'll ever say never do anything. Because everything can be made useful on the back end.
All right.
Never give up. I don't
All right. Thank you, Tonga.
Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, Sigrid Nunez. Sigrid is the author of many works of fiction, most recently The Vulnerables, and a story collection of hers, It Will Come Back to You, is going to be published next summer. So we have a lot of books on the horizon. I hope everyone's taking notes. So your excellent story in the Yale Review is about a woman who somewhat begrudgingly goes to a New Year's Eve party. So my first question is going to be kind of nosy, which is, how do you feel about parties? Do you like them? Do you host them? Can you tell us about the best party ever?
They're okay. I think I probably like parties less and less as time goes by. I never host them. I'm definitely not a party giver. It depends. Parties are so different one from the other. There are parties that you're very happy to be at, and other ones that you think, why did I go? I could have stayed home, etc. So it's a broad question, but I'm not a party person. I'm not a party pooper.
a good balancing act. So in the same story, and then I'll stop talking about the story, this character reflects a little bit about wishing that books were shorter. And you are somebody who writes in both long and short forms, novels and stories. And I'm curious, do you know when you sit down what you're embarking on, the short or the long? What do the different forms feel like to you?
I don't always know. Because I usually just start with something, that first sentence or an idea, and I don't know what it will turn into, but I seem to be a novelist, and so mostly it turns into novels, but I'm a strong believer that Faulkner was right, that most writers, he said it of himself, and I think it's true of a lot of writers, that you start out, you want to be a writer, so you want to be a poet, and then you discover that you can't do that, you're not good enough, so you try the short story, and then, as he said, I couldn't do that either, I was no good at that, so then you go to the novel, which is, in fact, the longest, but the other two forms are harder, and also I think what it really is that fewer people can be good poets and good story writers. It's really that that more people are capable of writing good novels than are capable of writing good poetry or good stories. Yeah.
Is it because of the difficulty of compression?
No, I just think those two forms are just
hard.
harder.
Yeah.
They're just harder, and that poetry just is the hardest. So I I have written stories over time, and now there's this collection coming out. But I have found poetry, forget it. But I have found writing stories to be harder all my life than novels, and only fairly recently have stories come easier to me. But that story in the Yale Review is the beginning of a novel.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that is something that is becoming a novel.
And has that happened to you before, where something that you think is maybe a story extends?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that has happened. Yeah, yeah.
So 2 of your novels just last year were adapted for the screen.
Yeah.
We will all have the chance to watch one of them this week if we want. I'm curious what the experience was like for you, and if this sort of, adaptation, even as a phenomenon, is so fascinating to me. Has it left any effect on how you think about the creative process?
No, because it's very separate. I was perfectly happy when these various directors said, we want to option this book because we want to make an adaptation. But I knew from the very beginning that I didn't want to have anything to do with it, and I told them that. I might answer a question they might have, but I didn't want to be involved in the. I don't know how to write screenplays, so I wouldn't want to join that effort. I don't know anything about directing. I'm not an actor, so I just wanted, to see what they would do. I understood, as most writers I know who have been unhappy with their film adaptations. But then that's right, that's the way writers are, And a lot of them, the reason is because they made that mistake of wanting to get involved, and then things didn't go so well, and also of having this idea that there is such a thing as a movie of a book. And it's like saying, I'm going to make a ballet out of your painting. It's a completely other thing. It's not, you can't really, who would want, nobody's going to make a transcription. So in that way, I felt really lucky because I was happy with what these directors did. And, The Friend is closer to the novel. That was easier. Whereas Almodovar, he, from the beginning, he really had his own idea. And in both cases, because there's a lot of interiority in these books, in both cases I knew they were only going to take a certain part of the story where they could see a film narrative that could happen. I think one of the most interesting things, though, given how different those directors and those movies are, is that in both of those books, someone has a daughter, but the daughter is just mentioned in passing. It's not a character. She's not a character. And from the very beginning, when I met with Almodovar to talk about the film, he said, I see a daughter. I'm calling her right now Michelle. I see a daughter for this Tilda Swinton character, because he already knew he wanted Tilda Swinton to play the role. And so he made this daughter, Michelle, and she's, Tilda Swinton plays her, actually.
Yeah.
And in the other book, and for the other adaptation, they also gave the Bill Murray character a daughter. And so I thought that was really interesting because, that's what I mean. The films, they needed that, or at least that's how the director saw it. And I remember when I was doing a talk like this, and somebody from the audience said, I'm a former book editor, and I can just say, adding a character that wasn't in your novel, that is a big no-no, See, to her,
But
this
you thought
idea,
it was interesting.
Yeah, this idea that, okay, so there's an easy answer to the problem. Don't sell your work. If it really bothers you that there might be another character or that the character might be different. And, I knew the sort of things that would be changed. Like, I knew that they would make people younger. Not that much younger, but younger, a decade younger than and then the characters in the book. And I have to say, I was fine with all the casting. The only thing that really took me aback was when they said, and then we have Bill Murray playing my characters don't have names, so that, that guy. And we're so happy about that. And okay, so the narrator and the Bill Murray character were supposed to be very close in age, but Naomi Watts and Bill Murray are not that close in age. But anyway, there's a place early in the book where this mentor, who is a womanizer, he's very young, and he has, looking back, and he's in the English department, and somebody wisecracks, yes, he was the Romeo of the English department, and I thought, Bill Murray is many things, many good things, but the Romeo of the English department does not come,
English departments can be strange places. You never know.
I know. So I when he read the book, and apparently he said to the directors, well, this could be a lot funnier. Okay? And I said, you go.
Go for it.
Yeah. That sounds good. I'm there. So, yeah.
So I want to ask you, as I've asked some other people about, since we're here on a college campus, looking back at that time in your life, maybe specifically as a reader and writer, were there things that really shaped you in that moment?
What, in college, you mean?
Yeah, college age.
Well, I arrived on the Columbia campus in fall 1968. So it was a time.
Yeah, it was a time.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was, and I have to say that right at the beginning, we were not going to class much.
Yeah.
Really. So, but it is true that it's true that it was in college that I started reading. I mean, I did some reading before that, but there's a certain kind of reading that really matters and that would lead you to become a writer and to love literature in a certain way besides fairy tales and Jane Eyre. That all begins in college, And I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in the English department. The first professional writer I ever met was Elizabeth Hardwick, and she was my workshop teacher there. So yeah, I mean,
and a very exacting one, right?
What do you mean by exacting? That's a
Well,
euphemism.
No, I think of tough and
Mean. She's very
insisting
mean.
on precision.
She's very mean. She's very mean. And she said things that you would never. Okay, she had an accent, and she said once, "I would rather shoot myself than read that again." Who would say that to? Who would say that to students? And what was another one? Another really good one was, I go to her office. We're supposed to be talking about my manuscript. She said, I tried to read your story. I really did. But I could not finish it because it was just so boring.
Well, I'm off to teach a workshop in 10 minutes, so I'm taking notes of what not to say.
What not to say, right.
All right, your last question. Favorite, first, last, never.
Oh. Let's try never again.
Okay, all right.
Never.
What's something you'd never want to write about that you think someone else might push you to write about or expect you to write about?
What would I
You'd never want to write about?
want to write about that someone else might want to write about?
Might want you to write about.
Oh, might want me to write about.
It's a many-layered question.
My romantic history.
All right. That's a big no-no, as the former book editor would say.
That's a big no-no. It's just too boring.
All right, round of applause for all our writers. Thank you for coming.